You can't change somebody else, but you can change yourself. And if that sounds a little wise for me, you're absolutely right. I've blatantly stolen it off my guest this morning on the Mental Space podcast here at the Emirates Literature Festival. And if you're watching on YouTube, yes, those are clouds. We do get them in Dubai. My guest today is known to millions as the Idiot Whisperer and describes himself as Sweden's most translated author who is still alive. Of course, it's Thomas Erikson, best-selling author of the Surrounded series, including Surrounded by Idiots. Welcome to the Mental Space podcast.
Thank you so much.
So on the podcast, we always start with the first two questions, which is, what does mental health mean to you?
Oh, I would say mental health is probably the state when you wake up one morning and feel good. You feel good about yourself, you feel good about waking up, and you look forward to the day. That must be something positive, right?
So, how did you wake up this morning? How is your mental health today?
I'm an early bird, so I've been around for a couple of hours before we met. And I enjoy waking up because I am always excited. No, that's a lie. Most of the time, it sounded better than
it did. You nearly sold it. You nearly sold it.
Yeah, but it wasn't really true. No, I'm most of the time I'm excited. I have what I do for a living is fascinating, and it inspires me. It makes me meet so many brilliant minds all over the world, and it's easy to be feeling good about this.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate. I'm aware of that.
So you're perhaps best known for Surrounded by Idiots. And many of our listeners will be going, Scott, talk to him about idiots. Talk to him about idiots. But I personally wanted to start with one of your later works, the Surrounded by Setbacks, which is a bit more of a personal book of experiences, as opposed to that kind of academic overview of what might be happening and personality traits and that sort of thing, which we will definitely get into.
All right.
Surrounded by Setbacks, though, just give our audience a little bit of a précis of what that book is, but also what was the inspiration? Why did you want to go personal with that?
Actually, there is a complicated story why I actually wrote it, and I will get to that. The book is about, all my books have, some people claim, negative titles. Surrounded by Idiots is not very positive. But the message of that book is, of course, that people are indeed not idiots. It's just that we don't understand them, so we call them idiots.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are idiots. When it comes to setbacks, it's basically about how to achieve success.
Yeah.
But most books about success have success in their names, Be successful, get successful, do this and achieve success.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a marketing thing to call it setbacks, but it is about how to go from where you are today to where you would like to be, regardless if it is building a beautiful family or making a lot of money or creating the most fabulous garden in the world or building your career. Regardless of how you define success, how can you take yourself from where you are to over there? That is what the book is about, and I wrote it because after the success with Surrounded by Idiots in Sweden, I got sort of, attacked by psychologists who didn't like me at all because I was selling too many books. I was stealing their speaking engagements, and people were calling me instead of them. It sounds strange when I say it, but it is actually competitors trying to take me down. And for me, that was interesting because it helped my career internationally. You cannot imagine. The Americans, they love this. One little guy against the whole establishment. Wow, what a cool story. So for me, that was interesting because it's all about the view. How do you view what's happening around you?
Yeah.
So I used those experiences and I put them into a book, which is actually, as you mentioned, Scott, you said it's the most personal one. That is true. I put a lot of myself into that book, and I'm proud of that one. It's my favorite of all the books.
Tell us, if you don't mind, if you can share. You do share in the book, some of your personal setbacks, because your life hasn't, like every life, as you say in the book as well. Like
exactly.
None of us have green lights all the way, to quote Matthew McConaughey.
No. Well, my worst moment in the book is to sit at my mother's deathbed. Since then, my father passed away last year, And that was a shock because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was in Athens giving a TED talk, so I couldn't go home. And for me, that was the most horrible news I've had in my life. And compared to those things, you know, a bit of a setback in your career, or, you know, losing some money on a stupid investment, doesn't really matter now, does it? I think it's about perspective. It sounds like a cliche, but it can always be worse. You know, it can always be worse.
I mean, I guess
you
we
have to put
just,
things in a perspective.
Yeah, just look around the world today, I think.
It could be a third world war. So, you know, how big are my individual problems, really?
Yeah.
You have to put it in perspective. And we all know this, but we tend to forget about it. So we complain about the small, nitty-gritty stuff, which doesn't really matter in the long run.
What did that teach you about yourself, you know, when you were going through that with the loss of your mother? Because as you say, money, investments, and you talk about, for each of us, our problems seem huge. You know, it is all about our individual perspective. And, you know, the person with not very much can look at the very super rich person, and still that super rich person is obviously perhaps more neurotic than the person living the simple life.
He or she's got more to lose, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a mentor for entrepreneurs all over Europe, including a couple of billionaires in pounds. And they look fantastically successful. They are sometimes beautiful, tanned, well-shaped, you know, everything is neat and tidy, and they, you know, they have white teeth, and they smile, and they look absolutely fabulous, and they drive Bentleys and all of that. But when you scratch the surface, you do not have to scratch very hard to see the darkness within each and every individual. That is just the case. Not saying that your experience is of no value to you. Of course they are. But put it in perspective. Don't think you can get away from life, actually. Don't think you can get away from how hard it is to be on this planet.
Yeah.
So we need to sort of pay attention to the daily moments. We have to sort of be there, be in the present. I'm sounding like a cliche, I know. But still, it's so true. We tend to forget about it.
Well, cliches are all born out of truths to a certain degree.
The problem with things is that, I need something new. I mean, humans are Homo sapiens. We are looking for novelty. We need novelty. Give me something new. Give me some new strategy or some new fancy word around. You don't need that. Go back to basic would be my thing. One step at a time. That's what the book is about, really.
Well, I mean, we live in an age right now where everything is about the quick fix, whether it's the diet, whether it's the, you know, everybody wants everything now. And you obviously talk about in the book that actually, no, things take time, and you quote Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
What is your view of success? How do you define success for Thomas Erikson?
That is, of course, the right question. Well, I would say my definition of success is actually to wake up in the morning and feeling good. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Of course, it is based on that I have some freedom. I have a lovely wife. Christina is my muse. She's a force of nature. Just thinking about her now makes me even...
Well, there's a big smile on your face as you talk about her, so that's the right reaction.
Oh, she is so fantastic. She's not easy.
Well, yeah.
Boredom won't take me. That's not going to be, you know. She's a force of nature, and for me that is wow. I do anything for her. Yeah. And just to have that individually, she's my third wife. So sorry to say, I had to try.
Third time lucky.
Times. What?
Third time lucky.
I don't know what you're going to call it. I will die happy in her arms. That is just the way it is. And for me, it can't be any better than that. Of course, it's based on, I have a certain amount of financial freedom. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I live in an old building and by a lake in the middle of nowhere. I can go away and you know, find myself in solitude a Sunday morning, you know, by the lake. And for me, that is fantastic. But I still am working basically 6 days a week because I want to.
I don't have
to, but
yeah, exactly. You don't have to.
I don't have to, which makes it easier to do because I don't have to. If I had to, if it was sort of demanded by me, it would probably not be such fun.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really weird when you think about it, right? when I had to go to work, I'm an ex-banker. You start at 8, they said. I said, okay, I'm going to come in at 7:50. 7:30 is also good, they said. You could start even earlier, I hated that. I'm working more now. But I enjoy it more, probably because I'm working for myself, probably. And I think that I'm bringing more value to the world now. I'm Swedish, so I have to be a little bit humble about this, actually. But I hope I provide valuable insights for people. I hope I'm contributing to the world. And just to knowing that I'm at least trying to do that keeps you going. It's I don't know what else I can say, really.
No, you've said that quite well, to be fair.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it makes perfect sense, particularly as I started this business to try and add some value into the world and have conversations about mental health. There's a really interesting, and it comes really kind of at the start of Setbacks, which is, for many people reading it, the receiving the wisdom could be a little hard, because you talk about responsibility, which is, again, something that perhaps we're not so comfortable with these days. But perhaps can I ask you to drill into the 3 types of responsibility that you talk about in that book?
Well, obviously, I'm not the only one that speaks about responsibility. I am aware of that, but it needs to be repeated, I think.
Yeah.
Basically, what people, I think, maybe it's this quick fix world we're living in. And that some people actually feel entitled to, everything without putting in the work.
Yeah.
I am responsible for everything that I do. That is just the way it is. I cannot blame anyone for what I do. And people say, well, maybe I had to do this and I had to do that. No, you didn't. You chose to do whatever you concluded based on whatever context it was. But I am also responsible for what I didn't do. If I could have reacted, if I could have reached out a hand to a guy and said, okay, I'm going to help you, I'm going to lift you up, Yeah. I got a message on Instagram this morning from somebody who had messaged me before. Messaged me, is that a word?
Yeah.
Send me messages on Instagram, and he said, I feel really bad, and my situation is really bad, and I have no money, and I'm poor, and my parents are horrible. Probably a young guy somewhere in the world. He doesn't tell me his real name, actually. But I have responded a couple of times because it was sort of a cry for help.
Yeah.
And today, this morning, he actually asked me for $1,000. So I said to myself, okay, nice try. Maybe he was just, grooming me for,
catfishing you.
Yeah, but still it felt real for some reason. So I said, I'm going to treat this as a cry for help. Okay. I won't send you any money, obviously. So he apologizes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just desperate. So I sent him a couple of ideas what he could do instead. I don't have to go through this all because it's going to be boring. But he thanked me and said, you're right. I don't want to be dependent on other people. I need to be dependent on me, which is a way to take responsibility. Just to kick the problem down the road, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
And he could be a scammer, but I decided to treat him as somebody who actually needed some help. So I said, I can help you in this little, media window. I can give you some coaching advice. Reach out once a week, and but I won't send you any money. It's not going to help you in the long run. I could have just said, no way.
Yeah. And just dismissed it.
I could have done that. I'm not trying to make myself look some sort of...
Saint Thomas of Erikson.
No, absolutely not. Because I've been in those situations before where I didn't act. I just said, that's stupid, that's silly. I don't believe this guy or this woman or whatever it might be. But this time I decided to act upon it, and we'll see how it goes. It makes me feel good. I'm no saint. Absolutely not. I'm just as anybody else in my own head most of the time.
Yeah.
But I think we can take responsibility for when we have the time, when we have the possibility, when there's an opening to do something for somebody else. So, and that leads me to the third kind of responsibility, which I define as how I view what happens around me. I can choose how I look at it. If it is raining, the old saying goes, you can either complain or you can just pick out your umbrella. You can do both. How do you look at the sky this morning? How do you look at the people that you meet? How do you view yourself in the mirror? Do you call yourself, the lazy kind of idiot, or do you say, okay, I've had some rough times, but I'm going to pick myself up now?
That's something that many people struggle with as well, isn't it? The story that they tell themselves, that self-narrative, is something is very easy for us to all slip into.
That is something that I told this guy. I said, the worst thing that can happen if you get dependent on me sending you money, you're going to resent yourself.
Yeah.
And it can't be any worse than that, because then you're gonna hate yourself, and then what are you gonna do?
Why do you think it is that we've stopped looking for our own validation, and are always seeking validation from external sources?
I don't know. Sometimes I blame social media for it. That is probably a part of the answer. Mm-hmm. It's probably not the truth. The world is evolving quickly now. Yeah. But then again, in the early 70s, they said the same thing. People were, doing cabarets in Sweden. Stop the world! I want to jump off it because it's going too fast. 73. What did they know, really? Seriously, Scott? They knew nothing.
Exactly.
We know better, but we have the same feeling within us. It's going too fast, and AI and whatever.
Yeah.
So what was the question?
Why are we constantly looking for validation externally as opposed to,
instead of self-validation?
A
lot of inspirational speakers, and I know quite a few of them, they say this: if you can't love yourself, nobody else can love yourself. I guess there is some sort of truth in it. However, it's also a dangerous path, because if I don't love myself, does that mean that nobody loves me? Nobody appreciates me? That's bad. I don't like that kind of...
And as you've discussed in previous titles as well, you can love yourself a little bit too much.
You can love yourself a little bit too much. You can indeed do that. You can be a narcissist. And
exactly,
you love yourself just because I'm breathing, therefore I have to be fantastic. Absolutely not. But I think it's a combination. Of course, it's good if you appreciate yourself. If you don't appreciate yourself, take a look at your actions. What is it that you do? What is it that you don't do? Did you drink too much beer? Did you neglect your physical health or your mental health? Or didn't you call your mother even though she might need a call from you? I mean, it takes you 3.5 minutes to say, hi, hey, mommy, how is it? What's happening? You don't have to go through all the childhood traumas. You can just reach out, and don't send text messages to your parents. They will not be around forever. It's just the way it is. They won't be there forever. If you have at least an okay relationship to your parents, reach out, give them a call, go over there, have a cup of coffee. You have the time.
Was there...
You will miss it when you can't go there anymore. That's all I'm saying.
Was there anything that you learned about yourself while you were writing Setbacks?
It was very valuable for me to put my own, how should I phrase it, to put my own way of guiding, how to navigate my own landscape, let's say. It was good to put it in writing.
Yeah.
It reminded me of some things that I have forgotten. One thing, it takes a village,
Yeah.
I can't depend solely on myself. I have to, reach out to other people, ask for feedback. I need help. I tried a long time as a young man to be an author. I wrote for 20 years without getting published because I thought I had it down. Well, obviously, I was completely stupid. Obviously, not a natural talent, obviously. And then I reached out to an editor and said, help me, and she helped me. And all of a sudden, within a year, I got published, What do you know? And I had forgotten a couple of these things, one step at a time,
Yeah.
As when they asked Tolkien, how do you write The Lord of the Rings? One word at a time.
Yeah.
Simple as that, One foot before the other, and one step, and another step, and another step. It takes time, and I look patient, but I'm really impatient. I'm very, very impatient as a person, a personality trait. Not very charming. I'm constantly like this, and I don't like it, but I can't change it. But I had to remind myself, which I did.
Well, but you say you can change yourself.
I can work on some things. I can fine-tune my own weaknesses a little bit. I can't violate who I really am. I can't do that. But I understand intellectually I need patience. So I reminded myself about that. And you know, this idea I took from, I don't even remember where I heard it the first time, when people say, how long does it take? And I say 7 years. It's not my own phrasing. I don't even recall where it is. It could be some of the gurus, some of the big names there. And people say, oh, I'm going to be 7 years older then. Well, how old will you be in 7 years' time anyway? It's not my own quote. But I think it's a good way of looking at it. Be patient. You have the time.
Yeah.
And if you're in a bad place, this too shall pass. Actually, that's just the way it is.
Time is often, I mean, we talk about time being a healer, but time is often the thing that puts the context to all the bad stuff that all those setbacks you might be going through. There are often lessons that learn, shape, create new opportunities, all that sort of thing. It's when you're in the middle of it, it can feel like, shit.
Feels like shit.
Yeah.
It indeed does. It indeed does. I got a question yesterday during a panel discussion here on the Litfest, and this lady asked me, as you are growing older, she said, smiling, and I said, I've seen myself in the mirror.
You still got all your own hair.
Move on. What is it now? You know, as you are growing older, are you getting more and more, laid back, leaning backwards, and feeling better about yourself? And the problem is, no, I'm getting more and more impatient and more, crazy, but I don't have so much time left. I have a lot of decades, obviously, but still a little bit like I should have started this earlier. I feel like I need to sort of...
You remind me of a question a friend of mine asked me to ask you. He does team building, Andy Fieldhouse, lovely guy, and he quotes you frequently. He goes to.
I like him already. Who is this?
He's better looking than me.
Sounds like a smart guy.
I said, because he's such a fan. I was like, give me some. What would you ask Thomas Erikson if you could be in front of him? And he said, ask him how he would like to be remembered in 50 years' time.
Oh.
I was like, well, that assumes that he's going to be dead in 50 years' time.
I don't care what you call me afterwards.
Yeah.
No, I would like to quote my own father.
Okay.
Who passed away at the age of 89. Strong, powerful, so sharp. So sharp, you have no idea. Such a wonderful character. I think he might be the one who never lied in my life. I don't think he was capable, too honest for his own good, probably. But he said, if you have something nice to tell me, don't wait until my funeral. I won't be there to listen. Yeah. If you want to say something good, come over, have a cup of coffee, and let me know. You don't have to wait until my birthday to give me something or to give me a fantastic speech or just bring a cake. Give it to me now. That's so valuable. It's such a good lesson. Yeah. Don't wait until it's too late, right? Why should I come once a year and say, I like you so much because this and that might be the truth. Sure. But I try to live like that.
Yeah.
And the question, how would I like to be remembered? I don't know. Like a good father, a good husband.
Yeah.
A good person. Someone trustworthy. That would be okay for me. I don't have any fancy ideas. I'm just like everybody else. There's nothing special with me. A good father, a good husband. That would be okay for me.
That would work for me too.
Because those people are the one that really counts.
So a lot of this success, Mr. Thomas Erikson, who sat in front of me today, it started with surrounded by idiots. As you say, you worked for many, many years trying to get published. Why did you write the book in the first place? And again, I'm going to credit Andy because he really wanted to know the answer to that question.
Okay, there is a story behind.
Yeah.
How much time do you have?
It's a podcast.
It's going to take 20
Unlimited.
Years. Okay. No.
Okay.
There is a serious story behind it. I wrote crime novels before.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I have published 6 of those. And they didn't sell at all. So I went to that was just sort of a hobby.
Yeah.
So I got this idea. As a management consultant, I was lecturing on the 4 colors.
Yeah.
Amongst many other things. That was just a narrow little window that I was using the disc profile and so on.
Because disc is actually from the 1920s or something, isn't it?
It originates back to Marston, 1928.
Yeah.
Emotions of Normal People, his book was called, which is an intriguing title, don't you think? Emotions of Normal People. But anyways, it's Jung-based, even earlier than that.
Yeah.
But anyways, and it was developed throughout the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. But as a management consultant, I was lecturing for management teams and so on, and they liked this, and I said, this is good. We understand it's a basic tool, but it puts us on track, so to speak. Now we know at least who is who in this team. And then I said to myself, maybe I should try to write a book to spread this knowledge to more people. By then, I did not know at least 50, maybe 70 books based on a disc profile had already been written. If I had known that, I would buy them and hand them out. But I had no idea. It sounds absolutely wild, but that's actually the truth. So I went to my then publisher because I said, I have a foot in here. I'm with them and they're with me, and of course they're going to listen. So I said, I have this brilliant idea for a book. It's going to be called Surrounded by Idiots. It's going to be about behaviors, 4 colors. This is my cover. It's my own design. And they looked at me with a horror in their eyes, and they said, that's the worst thing we ever heard. It's a stupid idea. It's a stupid title. It's an ugly cover. Just scrap the whole idea. Forget about it. This is not what you do. You should write crime novels. Go back to that. I was shopping around with all the publishing houses in Sweden, and they basically said the same thing, that I was, well, in a few words, I was the idiot. Just forget about it. I have never been really good at taking advice that felt like the wrong one, so I had to finance it myself. I am a self-published author, actually. I had to invest in it and take the risk myself. I had no marketing budget, no PR, no nothing. So the first year I was driving around with boxes of the book in the back of my car and forcing them onto my clients. Hey, we're going to do a workshop, Here's 10 books. And they looked at me and then at the book, with the same kind of eyes, like, what is this? Do we have to pay for it? I said, that would be good. Take 5, take 2, take a book. That's how it started. Then we got it into the airport, so then boom, like this. That is actually the story. Now I'm a genius, but who knew?
And you must have had to have this conversation about 1 million times by now. But for anyone who is uninitiated in your work, just précis for our audience, the 4 types, the 4 colors, and what the point of the book is.
It's the disc profile is built on a 2x2 matrix, task orientation, people orientation, extroversion, introversion. So you get sort of 4 basic types, which can be combined in any way. Some people say there's got to be more than 4 types of people. Of course, there's probably 19,000 types of people. But you have these basic elements, like when you bake a cake. If you know what dominance stands for, if you know what influence is, if you know what the stability trait is, and if you know what conscientiousness is, or whatever word you want. Analytical is another way, but it's not a C, so that's an A. That's a DISA instead of a DISC. There are some, varieties of it. But if you understand the basic ingredients, like when you bake a cake, you have to know what egg is and what milk is. And if you put sugar into the mixture, what's going to do with it. So that is how I use it. So you can learn about the red behavior, which is the dominant factor, fast forward going and very result oriented and action, bam, thought action all the time. And you understand what yellow trait is, the happy ones, the shiny ones, the smiley ones. And they say, have you seen the sun? And even though you might say, it's actually raining. Yeah, but the sun is always shining somewhere, right, Scott? Indeed, you got to stay on the positive side. Or the green ones, striving for stability, very change avert. It was better before, Very loyal, very, very team-oriented, hates to being in the center of anything. More of, the grinder in the back, so to speak. Very, very...
An important part of any team.
Yeah, exactly. They are sort of the foundation of any team. Unless the team is too big. 5 people, that's a crowd, Ooh, that's a lot of people.
Tell us about the Reds, though, because many of us can relate.
Reds?
Yeah, many of us have Reds in our lives, shall we say.
Yeah, that is correct. Well, the red people are the scary ones for some people, especially for the Greens, because they look you straight forward in the eye and say, you're no good, you should shape up, buddy. Ooh, he hates me. No, he was actually brutally honest. Red people are indeed the ones who makes people run around a little bit. And they have a high influence on the world because they are quite strong-willed, let's call it. But they are also in minority. Statistically speaking, the Reds are 9.5% of the population. And people with only red, because those exist too, who are red and nothing but red, 5%. And 5% of 9.5% is actually 0.5% red people who are only red, like my wife. She's just red and nothing but red. And when I start talking like this, she says so many words. Get to the point. She just,
Are we married to the same woman? My wife's also called Christina, and she's...
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they keep us alive.
Yeah.
They keep
Sometimes
us
the wisdom's a little difficult to receive, but
yeah. But she said you wanted the truth, so here it is, bam, and which you could at least smoothen it up. No, I don't have time for that smoothing up thing. You knew who you got into, so just live with it. She says, so, which is true.
I mean, the conversation. I think, perhaps it was COVID. Coronavirus, lockdowns, but we've had this increasing conversation around the future of work, what work looks like. And it feels like almost like it's an inflection point. It's almost like a perfect storm. We've had COVID, we've got different generations, or almost like 3-4 generations in the same office with different priorities, different life experiences. Your work, it almost feels like it's got more and more relevant over time. And we look at the world of workplace now, obviously we talk a lot about workplace well-being and compassion and psychological safety in workplaces. What's your view of the world of work today? Where do you think that companies, you obviously do a lot of corporate training as well, but what are companies either getting right, but more importantly, perhaps what are companies getting wrong?
It's a good question, Scott. It's also a very complicated question. If I knew the answer, I would be a very rich man, I think. I would say what we do right is we talk about it. What we do wrong is we do not understand that we can't label people and say, Gen X, they are like this, so they need the following, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
Gen Z or Gen Z, as it's actually called, right? Gen Z. They are like that, but that is one thing that is sort of on top of mind of a lot of entrepreneurs that I coach and mentor. They say, how should we sort of bring the young people into the organization? And they read articles, from think tanks who say, Gen Z, Gen Z, they are like this and like that. And you need to give them as much rope as they ask for. And for me, that's just stupid. Of course you shouldn't do that. When I was young, I thought I had it down. I thought I knew everything. Still, young people think they have everything sort of figured out, but they don't. Not to say we shouldn't pay attention, we shouldn't listen. Of course we should listen, and we should learn from their perspective, but they also need guidance. They need guidance. Just because someone is 22 years old, he might not be an IT guru. He might be more into TikTok than I am and understand sort of the basics of that. Sure. But he hasn't been around for very long. He doesn't understand the market or human beings or collaboration or anything. So he needs guidance. And you touched upon that. I gave a TED talk about this. And Gen Z, Gen Z, it's 2.7 billion people. That's with a B. 2.7 billion. To tell me they're all the same, it's crazy. It's wild. When I look at the definition of Gen X, I can't recognize more than maybe 20%. I'm a Gen X. Something suits me, most things doesn't. So that is just the way it is. I think what we tend to forget about is we need to go back to looking at the individual. Looking at you, Scott, what do you need?
Yeah.
Let's have a chat about that. What would you like to have in order to be the best productive force in this organization? And you might tell me, well, I would like to have more instructions, I need some more coaching, I need some inspiration. You might be right, you might be wrong. The problem here is if you say you need something that I don't agree with, I have to go with what you tell me because otherwise you won't pay attention. The same thing goes for young people. I need freedom, they say. I need to come in at the office when I want to, and I need to leave when I want to, because I'm going to go I almost said skateboarding, but that only shows how old I am. Edit that out, please, because it sounded really stupid. It looks stupid, and I said it.
Well, it's authentic.
I don't know. When I was young, people skateboarded. I didn't dare to. I never. But anyway, no. So the point is this. The point is this. Young people don't want to be treated as young. They want to be treated as people.
Seen, heard, listened to.
Yeah. So you need to sit down with the individual, because young people are also reds or yellows or greens or blues, and they have different drivers. Some have a theoretical driver, meaning a motivational factor, which is beneath the surface. Some people who are young would like to see quick results. Some are more patient. Some have this aesthetic drive. They would like to, do beautiful things and find balance in life. Some have this social drive. They like to help people. You have to go back to the individual basis, I would say. And that is sort of forgotten, I would say. Hybrid work is another thing that sounds good on a piece of paper, because mostly people hate commuting, and the pandemic helped us.
Yeah.
Let's stay at home and do this from our living room. Sure, sometimes this is good, but often it's not so good, because you have to interact like this. Yeah. You have to have a conversation. You have to see the body language. You have to look into someone's eyes, and you have to sort of read between the lines and see the frowning face. And you need to sort of sense what is in the room. And if we take that out, you can't let the CFOs decide this. It's good on the spreadsheet, because the result's going to be better if you sort of halfen the office space. But it's not good for the people.
And again, but
I'm not saying you couldn't work from home, but I'm saying it's not the whole solution.
But everyone's going to have their own perspective on that one as well. I've seen it from, for me in the pandemic, in a toxic workplace. I've got children at home. I loved lockdown because I got to spend more time with my kids than ever before.
Good on you.
Yeah, brilliant. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that the 20-year-old Gen Z employee who's just started in a company that doesn't know what they're doing, who's locked in their one-bedroom apartment, no social,
that was bad.
And often their colleagues are their family to some degree, particularly in a place like Dubai, where we have expats who leave their families and come here. That's not a great environment for them. So remote working isn't, 100% the answer to everything. And there are many professions in which people can't remote work.
Correct. I mean, it's good that we have the opportunity in those industries where this is possible.
Yeah.
Like yours and like mine, in a way, I guess. But I really don't like online lecturing. I like to be on a stage.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an ego thing, I understand that. But also I need to feel the tension in the room.
Yeah.
If I don't get any feedback from the audience, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I can do it, based on my experience. I can make it work, but I will never be as good on the screen as I would be in reality. That's just the way it is. But that is me, and I have great respect for not everybody likes to hear this, and I understand that. But it's still, as you ask me, I have to tell you what I think.
Yeah, of course.
The pandemic was a hard strike for young people. That is the truth. So we have to help them. I had this idea when the pandemic came. I have a sister who is exceptionally yellow. She is so extrovert. And the blue side of me know that we didn't comment on the blue perspective, but we might do that. Yeah. Otherwise, people will actually blame me for it. But anyway, she is extroverted like you cannot imagine. Anyways, she sold this. My theory was that extroverted people would suffer while working from home because there were no socializing and no talking and no chit-chatting around the coffee table. Yeah. Introverted people are better at working in solitude, working under silence. They don't need the headphones anymore because nobody's talking and distracting them. Turns out I was wrong. Turns out the following: everybody needs the social interaction. For extroverted people, my sister solved this by having after work on Friday evenings on Zoom. Yeah. Having a glass of champagne with her closest buddies. Yeah, whoa, talk to me about your week. So they sort of worked it out.
Yeah.
And smiling and playing music and have you seen this, and showing their phone to the screen and all of these really interesting things. The introverted people who need socializing as well, only to a smaller degree, they had no natural way of doing it. They couldn't stop by the coffee machine and say, hey, so what about your dog, Is he doing okay? What are you going to do this weekend? These small, tiny bits and pieces that they need too. There were nothing of this. It was nothing of those. So they were suffering worse than ever by staying at home. And that tells us something. We can't have people at home all the time. You need to probably define some sort of balance.
Yeah.
And if people say, I want to be home 4.5 days a week, I'm not sure that's the best way to go. I'm actually not sure about that. Let's say 50% for the sake of argument. I wouldn't go beneath that. Above that.
Yeah.
From home.
I
can't prove it, but it feels like it.
Do you think it feels like management has got slightly more complicated these days now? Because for a while it used to be, okay, and Henry Ford brought it in, 9 to 5, sit in the office, sit in front of me, I can see you, and one size fits all. We're in a much more fluid situation now.
Yes.
Is there hybrid working, different hours?
You mentioned mental health.
Yeah.
Why is self-leadership so popular these days? That's a pretty new term.
Yeah.
Sort of a new term. Not new, but new-ish at least. A couple of years down the road, self-leadership and what is self-leadership really? What's the definition? I have Swedish gurus at home and I ask them, so what is it? And they never say the same thing, so who knows really what it is. But it is something needed because we do not have a proper leadership. If we had good leaders, we wouldn't be forced to lead ourselves.
Yeah.
For some people, self-leadership is a good thing. For some people, it doesn't work at all because most people are not self-leaders. They're not leaders. Most people, and we know this by huge studies made by the WHO, for example, examining people all over Europe, 100,000 people. Most people are followers. 85% of people
But not
are
everybody
followers.
can be the boss of a company or the leader of a company.
Absolutely. But then again, if you don't know how to lead other people, how do you know how to lead yourself?
Yeah.
That is much more complicated. No, take responsibility, as I say. That is a way of leading yourself. Take responsibility, pay attention to what you do and what you don't do, and all of those things. But it's really, really hard. And who should train you to lead yourself? How could you figure everything out by yourself? There are experimental organizations with no managers. They exist.
The flat structure, yeah.
Yeah, but no one is really in charge of things, but because we do it together.
Yeah.
But the problem with this is, if we're all in charge, no one is in charge. If it's not my responsibility or your responsibility, whose responsibility is it?
Yeah.
Who knows the answer to those questions? Some people make it work in a sort of a small and tiny context, but you can't run 2,000 people using that method. Unfortunately, I wish it was true, but it isn't, because of how the human mind is wired. That is just the way it is. We can't sort of look beyond our biology still.
Yeah.
Or can we?
Are we evolving, though, in terms of that leadership model? As you say, if a leader can't lead themselves, how can they lead other people? Often leaders have been promoted in companies because they're good at processes, and they're not good at doing exactly what you talk about, which is taking it to an individual level and leading individuals. How important is it for them, A, to be able to lead themselves, but then learn how to lead individuals rather than just be simply good at a process?
It's complicated. There are some basics when it comes to as I mentioned before, people are looking for new stuff, new strategies, new ideas, new processes, and new studies that has been made that can prove this and that. The problem with studying human behavior is that it's very hard to repeat the same study over and over and sort of replicate it. So like when you study physics or mathematics, you can prove 2
It's an
plus
exact
2.
science, yeah.
That's the STEM fields are good at that. They can reproduce the same study over and over and over and say this has to be true.
Yeah.
When it comes to everything touching psychology, it's going to be a little bit more messy. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Not saying we can't learn, but people are people. People are different. We need to go back to some basic things. When it comes to leadership, I mean, there has been interesting things by Hershey Blanchard, even in the early 70s, studying children's way of developing their own skills in drawing pictures and so on, and realizing that adults learn kind of the same way. What a surprise. How couldn't you see that one coming? So they know if you're a beginner, you feel strong and you feel motivated and you have self-confidence, but you know absolutely nothing about the task at hand. But you feel like you know. Yeah. What kind of leadership do you need now? You need instructions. You need someone who says, do this, come back and report. Even though you must say, no, I want to do this and that, and I want to, blah, 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 whatever. No. First you learn this, come back and report, and then we take the next step. That's how you do that.
Yeah.
Right. So you can follow sort of a certain process. It's not complete. It's not 100% efficient. I understand that because there are more things to consider. But if you can do just that, when people end up in the ditch, they lose their self-confidence and their motivation, but they haven't learned very much. The only thing they know is what they can't do.
Okay.
They understand their incompetence.
Yeah.
Now what do they have? They have nothing. If you call them idiots and kick them out, you messed up. You have to coach them and sit down and say, okay, this is tough. I'm going to guide you through this. You're okay. It's not you, it's me. I'm going to help you. And then you reach a level where you feel sort of, okay, I'm sort of figuring this out now. I understand more and more about what I'm supposed to do. But you don't have any self-confidence because you have no success stories. Then what do you need? You need somebody who doesn't instruct you because that's what you do know. You need somebody who says, okay, I trust you. I think you can do this. But self-confidence is only built by your own performance. I can't give you self-confidence. You can give you self-confidence.
And we kind of come back to where we started with the things we do, the things we don't do, and how we react to everything else.
So then you have to pay attention. You have to be sort of observant of your own actions. And then you have people who are self-going individuals, so the superstars. What do they need? If you instruct them, they're going to leave. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do, and you don't have to sort of applaud me either. I know, I'm good, I know. What do they need? They need to be challenged. I think you can reach even further. I think you can do even better. Are you up for it? Sure am, let's do this. And if you understand that little loop, and this is an old loop, if you understand this, you can do it, but you have to do it on an individual level. You cannot coach the team. You can stand on a stage and say, yay, whoa, we're going to conquer the world. Okay, fine. And then you have to go, employee by employee by employee and just, okay, so what do you need?
Yeah.
In a few words. If you can do that, you're going to solve 80% of the problems. But if they sit at home, how can you tell?
Yeah.
Where are they in the process? Mentally, do they deliver on sort of, what they're supposed to do, and what kind of result do they produce? How could you tell if you're not there?
That almost feels like a mic drop moment. And I could literally sit here and talk to you all day. But I'm conscious, unfortunately, with the podcast that we always do have to wrap up at some point. If I may close with one question, which is, look, we look around the world. The world's in a bit of a difficult space right now. And I know that you are not a fan of the news. And I totally understand that. And I completely get that. What gives you hope?
I believe in the individual. I certainly do. It is true, I do not watch the news. And with the news, I mean traditional media. I think they have dropped the ball totally. I'm sorry to say, I have a great respect for professional journalists and the ones who really want to do a proper report on the happenings all over the globe. However, the ones who created the headlines, no, I'm sorry. Clickbaits are, I'm sorry.
1,000,000% agree.
They are using the human mind in a way, they know we are focusing on negativity. We are focusing on the dangers of the world, because that is how we survived out there in the jungle, thousands of years ago. In that way, biologically speaking, Homo sapiens has not evolved at all. We are the same as, somewhere BC. That is just the way it is. We understand more, and we might have a higher IQ and so on, but the basic instincts, they haven't changed. We are looking for negativity, for fear, for
Well, we have a media industry that keeps creating lines that are just going to...
Exactly. I have friends who are constantly stressed out because of what they see in the headlines. And I say, don't watch the news. I have never felt so good about myself and the possibilities of the world and the people in it since I left news media, traditional news media.
Yeah.
What gives me hope is having conversations like this, because we can now, you and I together, spread at least a grain of hope in people, and saying, if you take responsibility for you, then you be stronger and you feel more powerful, and then you are more equipped to help somebody else. And you will never feel good about yourself unless you do something for somebody else. Speaking about cliches here, but if you don't provide value to other people, you won't get paid anything. You have to provide some sort of value, and it has to be to somebody else, unless you're a psychopath or a narcissist. But I'm not talking to you. You can get
That's
the
a
hell out of
conversation
it.
for another day.
Exactly. But that gives me hope. And I know people think the same thing, but it's sort of getting drowned in all this bad stuff out there. So, yeah.
Switch off the news and concentrate on
Turn
adding
off the
value.
news. I think so.
Amazing. Thomas Erikson, thank you very much for joining us on the Mental Space podcast.
Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
If you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I have, and this conversation as much as I have, please remember that you can subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please click subscribe. And remember, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, we're everywhere you want to find us. Once more, Thomas Erikson, thank you very much.
Thank you.